about next Wednesday. We'll finish that up, and that's mediastinal things. So this gives us a kind of a quick opportunity to review some mediastinal stuff. That's our divisions, right?
Yes.
Which divisions? Radiographic, yes. Anterior, middle, posterior, and those are the radiographic divisions. Remember, there's also anatomical divisions. And they're quite a bit different, aren't they?
Yeah.
Anatomically, there's 4: superior, anterior, middle, posterior. So we just do a little shell game with them, and then we come up with these, which actually are simpler. And they're simpler because we divide it based on conditions. What happens in the different areas of the mediastinum. Okay, so what happens typically in the anterior? We did this yesterday, out here. What happens out there? How do we remember? What's most common? Widening is classically what we get radiographically. Widening, a little bit of widening, not widening, major widening, some widening. Widening is the main issue. So what happens in the anterior mediastinum? What conditions in the anterior mediastinum?
Thymus.
Okay, what's the easy way to remember? 5 T's.
and A.
5 T's. Terrible aneurysm, tumor lymphoma, and then our thyroid, thymoma, teratoid. Yeah. Doesn't matter what order you do them in as long as you remember them. And T is terrible aneurysm. Don't forget that. It's terrible aneurysm. And some authors don't include aneurysm, but I think it's worthwhile to do it that way. So as you look at that lateral, does this patient have a mass density?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's predominantly where?
In the middle.
Middle. It's predominantly middle. Even though it does go into the anterior, it does go a little into the posterior, the center of it's in the middle, isn't it? Now when we look on the frontal, you can see there's a density extending outward in the region of the hilus, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Has a rounded convex border, and what kind of an angle feeling do you get here?
Obtuse.
Yeah, obtuse. Didn't we talk about the extrapleural sign? We did in class, but we did in the lab. Was it last week that we did?
2 weeks ago.
Remember we said that that extrapleural works from the mediastinum as well as from the chest wall. So this would suggest to us then that this is probably coming out of the mediastinum, not a lung lesion up against the mediastinum. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing that applies to the chest wall applies to the mediastinum. If the borders are obtuse, it would suggest to us probably not lung. This actually was coming out of the hilus. And this is what's called a bronchogenic cyst, but there's really no way to know that just from looking at it. And you see how it's difficult to see the actual hilar blood vessels? Because they're being silhouetted by this density. Because it's water density, and it's pushing against the water density blood vessel, so it's really silhouetting the hilus. If this thing was in front, if we had a lung lesion out here in front, if we had a lung lesion sitting out here, we'd expect then we'd be able to see the hilus through it, because it wouldn't silhouette it because it's not touching it. So it applies even to the hilus. So this was a mediastinal lesion, and this is a middle mediastinal, and most of the time doesn't produce any symptoms. A bronchogenic cyst is like a bronchial diverticulum. It was like an area that was going to develop and then didn't. Usually they're typically sealed off, and usually they got mucus in them, and they're just a development like a diverticulum, a bronchial diverticulum. All right, look at that.